Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Connect to Engage video chats. This is a show that's all about communication and how critical it is across industries and professions. I'm Adrienne Wallace from Connect to Engage. I'm a communication coach, and our goal for each of our video chats is to bring thought-provoking conversations and expert perspectives all about communication. So we invite professionals from the same industry to share their stories and experiences about communication, what works and what doesn't work in order to accomplish tasks, make connections, and successfully engage with others in their personal and professional lives. So today I'm welcoming a special guest from the restaurant industry, Darren Remmer. Darren is a chef and manager and comes with a lot of years of experience. So we're very pleased to have him today. So welcome, Darren. So
Thank you.
awesome. So my first question for you, I'd really like to hear about your role in the restaurant industry and why you got into it.
Excellent question. My role in the industry, I am a seasoned chef and manager, restaurant manager, who's been gearing. I've been gearing my career to be a restaurateur for years now. I have a passion for it. I got into the industry simple. I'll never forget it. I was 27 years old, and I had to make a decision with my life. I said, for the rest of my life, I need to invest into something that I really love to do for my children. So for me, I had a goal. I wanted to do something I was passionate about. I wanted to teach that to my children. I didn't want them to fall into the same, I feel like, system that me and my generation fell into, where you had someone pushing you to do what they thought was best for you. I wanted to do what was best for me, and I wanted my children to do the same. So I decided to pursue culinary arts because I knew that that's what my love was. And I knew that if I was doing anything in that industry, I'd be passionate about it and I'd be successful. And my kids would see that. And then hopefully they would follow suit and follow what drives them so that they could be successful. So that's why I'm in the industry I'm in.
Awesome. Thank you for that. That's very inspiring and brave to pursue your dreams. So let's talk about, I know you've had a couple roles, you should wear different hats, literally and
Yes.
figuratively, in the restaurant industry. So can you talk about the role of effective communication within the day-to-day operations of your workday?
Man, that's extremely essential, especially when you're in the management level. Communication is everything. And the funny thing about it is in hospitality, I feel like no matter what role, you could come in as the dishwasher. Every single person, there has to be effective communication just because there's always going to be something that goes wrong. Anybody in hospitality will tell you that, um, there's always going to be a moment, so you want to kind of be prepared. You want to have people, you want to communicate properly when something isn't, or when you see red flags, because sometimes they may be an indicator. You may see the smoke on your shift and it may not affect the restaurant until a couple shifts later. So you want to communicate on what's going on. So I think the biggest tool for management in hospitality, emails or having something written down. You want something concrete. The worst thing you can do as a leader, I think, in my field, is leave the knowledge right here. And I see a lot of great, talented people in my industry that do that. That's a flaw of theirs. They're like, oh, yeah, yeah, we talked about it last week in a meeting. I said, but you didn't communicate it with the team. The purpose of, effective leader is communication. That's a huge part of it. So you want everyone to be on the same page. I've always worked with teams where everyone has specific roles and specific areas of responsibility. But what made some of the best teams I've worked with successful is that you'll have a leader that's in charge of everything that says, hey, look, you're in charge of this, you're in charge of that. But ultimately, we're always going to talk about everything as though everyone is responsible for everything so that nothing gets missed. Um, So usually in no matter what concept, I've worked for almost every major concept when it comes to hospitality and restaurants. Um, and from the three major ones that I've been a part of, I've noticed that they all have a communication. Old school, they can say the red book. So the red book is every day at the end of your shift or the beginning of your shift, you come in, there's going to be this big, bright red book literally sitting in the office. You pick it up, you read the notes to see what happened on the days you weren't there, and then on the days that you are working, you leave notes that are needed for operations. Well, thank God the company I work for now realized that the era of the red book was diminishing and it was time to elevate. So we have a system online now. So it still does the same purpose as the Red Book, except it's an online format and it's a lot more detailed. So you can leave sections about training. You can talk about sales. You can talk about marketing. You can talk about some situations you have with staff members, or talk about just some great experiences with guests. But that's crucial because, like for me, let's say I take a vacation off and I come back, it's kind of tasking to have to hunt people down to talk to them about a week's worth of work. And you've been in high school before. You remember, especially if you did block scheduling, missing a week of school is like missing 2 weeks. And in the work industry and hospitality, missing 1 week, that's like missing almost a month if you're a manager because there's always emails coming from corporate. So for me, the number one thing for leaders, get to work early. If you're on time, you're late. Get to work early enough to where you can prepare for the shift. If you have to start at 11 o'clock, great. Then you need to be there by 10:30 and give yourself 30 minutes to go through emails, missed calls, notes that have been left for you. Go through all of that so that you are caught up. And I think that's a part of communication. So, to managers that actually utilize, I think, the red book technique in regards to journaling everything that happens every day, that's crucial.
That's very insightful. I've never thought about that mode of communication for the restaurant industry because what we see from the customer's perspective, you have the servers, you have the managers, you have the chefs, and everyone's talking. And I never thought about how important the written communication is as well.
Yes.
Yeah, so I don't know if it is related to the written communication or not, but I'll have you tell us a time when communication either resulted in a vital success or an epic fail at work.
Oh, that's man. I have tons of those stories. I can actually tell you a recent one. It's kind of funny. Well, it's not funny, but um, so every single day, the company I work for now, we do a thing called a taste plate. Now, this taste plate, what we're doing is we're pretty much just sharing a picture within the company and other peers of a particular item that we're showcasing that day for taste plate. It may be, it's always going to be a food item, and it's always going to be an alcoholic beverage. So what we do is front of house, they'll own the drinks, kitchen, we'll own the food, and then we send this picture to all of the top execs, to all of the other restaurant managers in our field and within our company, and they get a chance to see the same product. So we use one of these apps, and everyone joins in on a group chat. We send the pictures, and yesterday actually we had to do our chicken sandwich. Now the chicken sandwich, great dish. Chef puts it up, and immediately we see it's wrong. We just let them make it. Now, the whole key to Taste Plate is about recipe adherence. So not only are we sharing this with the company and showing them, hey, this is how it's supposed to be, um, this is a tool for us to see who on our team doesn't know the recipe correctly. And when we notice it as managers, we correct it. So this particular cook, he puts it up confidently, throws it in my face. Here you go, chef. And I'm looking at it like, okay, it looks like a good chicken sandwich. It's just not our chicken sandwich. He had it plated completely wrong. So I break it apart, got my gloves on and I'm dissecting and looking at everything. Okay, that's wrong, that's wrong. My executive chef comes over, is like, "Hey, you're not going to take a picture of that, are you? That's got to be fixed." I said, "Correcting it now, chef." And then he says, "Yeah, there's no red onions that go on this chicken sandwich." And I'm new to the role, so I've only been I transferred to this location. I've only been here for about a month and a half. I had no idea about this revision to the chicken sandwich.
Mm.
So I'm sitting here and I'm building. I said, well, the recipe that we have printed everywhere in the restaurant for training purposes says it is red onions. I said he did build the sandwich wrong, but everything says red onions. So what do you mean is a revision? Oh yeah, they sent the communication, the email a little bit ago. I read it. Okay, chef, you read it, but nobody else in the restaurant knows about this but you. So only the cooks that you've coached directly know that this sandwich no longer contains onions. How about if there's a revision, contact corporate, see if we can get a revised copy, or just edit the recipe yourself. Scratch it out with a black sharpie. I don't care, but change it so that we know, so that when we're coaching it to new people like myself, we can make sure. Because I was confident. I'm like, hey, the sandwich is perfect now. There's no red onions. I said, but the recipe says red onions, and we're supposed to take a picture of the food with the recipe. So if they revised it, why would we be using this recipe if it still says red onions? Now, right away, we were able to catch it, fix it, send out a great picture. But had we followed the proper steps of communication, that would have never happened. Number one, and I even hold myself accountable to that. Had I went through and dug through the emails maybe a little bit harder, maybe I would have caught that chicken sandwich revision. Because I kind of remember hearing about it, but in the process of the industry and working so much, something like that, you don't just make assumptions. Like, you like to see things in black and white because there's so many moving parts. So for me, um, not having those onions on that sandwich, okay, that's crucial. I don't want to send this to the executive chef for the entire company and she sees the onions. I don't want any problems. I'm like, so I want to fix that. I want to be consistent, but I want to be a great leader. And it was a moment for my boss because I don't challenge. I respect my peers. I respect those above me, but I couldn't hold it in. I had to stand up for the team and for what's right and say, hey, if this is a revision, at what point were you going to properly communicate this with us? I said, because if it's not written down, we're not talking about it in meetings. We haven't brought it up at all. So who knows that it's a revision besides you in this restaurant? So as a leader, now I have to take that personally. So now every single chicken sandwich that comes out, I'm checking for onions. But not only that, I'm not going to wait for them. When I go back to work today, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to pull all the recipes for chicken sandwich. I'm going to get rid of them, or I'm going to just alter them so that they know there are no onions in the sandwich anymore. And if we would have just executed that, it would have been one less step that we would have had to worry about.
So now I'm interested because you work in the back of the house in the kitchen, but the front of the
Mhm.
house has the menus for the guests.
Mhm.
So have the menus been updated?
Now, see, that's the trick. The trick is we have a very simplified menu. So you'll see chicken sandwich. We don't go into the description on the
Oh.
menu. The problem is now, as a kitchen manager, I'm going to have to communicate with the front of house staff. So how do you do that when the servers don't have emails? When the servers don't read the red book because that's a management tool. Now it's my job as a manager to put in the red book or in our emails, hey, make sure that we're including the revision to the chicken sandwich and all pre-shifts for the next week. I don't want it to be just a couple days. I want to beat this into their head, okay, in the most positive way possible, but bring it up in every pre-shift. So that means for the next week, we have 14 moments because we should be doing two pre-shifts a day, one for the AM shift, one for the PM shift. So that means there should be 14 moments in this week where we're telling the servers directly, hey, the chicken sandwich no longer has red onions. And then the same pre-shift, I'm going to loop in cooks.
Mhm.
because it affects them as well. So during my pre-shifts, I'm going to make a point to pull them in and say, hey, I want you guys to join the pre-shift today. Hey, everybody, let's give it up for the cooks because they rarely join the pre-shift. Hey, yeah, okay, now wants to celebrate. Hey, everybody on the same team. Here we go. No onions on the chicken sandwich any further. Okay, we got it. Great. So, service, when you're explaining to the guests, we do not, if they want red onions still, of course, we'll provide it. However, the sandwich no longer comes with thinly sliced red onions. We got it. We got it. We good. Done. And that really, when it comes to back of house communication with front house, that's really what you have to do. That's the
Mhm.
hands-on part where it's like you can put a note up, you can post it. You know, some restaurants I've worked with have had like boards up in the kitchen where the front of house and kitchen they all look at it. You can write on it, and I've done it as well at other concepts. And I'll leave like a weekly memo up and just put, hey, this is an agenda for this week. That works as well. The problem is it's the 2-3% in the restaurant that don't look at it ever. It's that it's that one line cook that doesn't speak a lot of English, but is an amazing cook, and he's not gonna waste his time reading that because he may struggle with reading English as it is. Why is he gonna read the memo? Or if it's somebody who comes in and maybe is cross trained to help cook chicken sandwiches, but he mainly washes dishes. He's probably never going to read that board because he
Right.
doesn't care. He's there to wash dishes. He's got his headphones on. He's coming in. He's like, look, I just want to get in the zone and get ready for this rough shift. You know, he's not thinking about a chicken sandwich. But what happens on Friday when one of my cooks is out and I need him to sub and come help on the line for a little bit, and he's making chicken sandwiches and he's throwing onions on them. So I'm going to communicate to everybody so that there's nobody missed. So the best thing I say, you know, free shifts, and there's nothing wrong with the collaboration of all methods. You
Mhm.
know, have your pre-shift, have your red book for the managers, and then even have something up in the kitchen posted to where you can have highlights from the pre-shift, and maybe those highlights be the concrete points that you're trying to set for that week. So you're going to keep bringing them up in the pre-shifts, but you're also going to post them up. I don't think anything's wrong with a little bit of redundancy when it comes to hospitality because, you know, I'd rather be safe than sorry.
Absolutely. That story says a lot, right? And bringing the parts of the restaurant together, the front of the house, the back of the house, but also trying to meet people where they are in whatever communication mode to resonate with
Yes.
them to make sure you're not missing anybody. So, a lot of important tidbits in that. So let's talk about the biggest mistake that you think people who are in your occupation make when it comes to communication.
Man, besides like the mistake I kind of just told you about, I think the biggest mistake made is poor communication and
Mm,
unprofessional communication. That's what I noticed because that affects peers as well as subordinates. And I don't like to use that word. Let me take that back. Peers and team and the team.
yeah.
Um, and that alone right there, just what I just did, how I corrected myself, is because communication is vital. I don't want to be that manager that walks into my restaurant treating my team like subordinates. No, we're peers. Some of these people are older than me. You know, some of them I'm the same age as their dad or their brother. So I try to relate to everyone. The best way to communicate first is with respect. If you
Mhm.
don't have respect attached to communication, especially in a professional workspace, you fail. Number one, I'm not going to be the manager with the HR issue on my shift. That's never going to happen. Because I tell people all the time, listen, understand what HR is. The worst part is when people don't understand what HR really is. Oh, it's for us, human resources. Stop wrong. Okay? You sound like someone who doesn't own a business. HR is to protect the company, which means that HR is just another word for lawyers. Okay. So understand, we don't want to get in trouble with the staff. We don't want to get in trouble with the guests. And me personally, I feel like your team, that is your guest. That's your internal guest. And their feedback is more valuable than anyone because it's telling the truth. It's telling you if we're genuine or not. Think about how many times in our industry where we just kind of put on this persona for the guests, but what's happening behind closed doors? Be consistent. So the worst part is communication. Is just the respect and the professionalism. Um, I'll give you a perfect example. I walked in one day on a pre-shift. I was coming into work, and the manager was on a pre-shift with a team, and he was being very negative. And I watched the energy of the entire team as he was talking, and he's beating them down, and they're listening out of respect, but some of them are not engaged because some people just don't take to that. And I've seen it even on the management level to where you're talking down to the team. I had this one GM from a different uh, restaurant I worked at where he calls a meeting. He has an attitude, he sits us down and he's just barking on everybody. And it really wasn't anyone's fault, but maybe one particular person. So you project that energy and you lose respect. And what happens, um, your points don't become as valid because you tied emotions with business. So now you're going to have people that don't trust you because they say if you can't manage your emotions, you can't manage the restaurant. So I'm gonna do what I know is best for me, and I'm gonna let you make your mistakes on your own because that's what happens. So the biggest thing is just respect and professionalism. So whether I don't care if this is a buddy of yours that you've been working with for 10, 20 years, leave your jokes and your playtime for you guys individually. But when it comes to communication with the team, be professional, be genuine, be direct, and be honest. Have some integrity. You know, act like the owner of that company is always sitting on your shoulders, your conscience, and they're telling you, "Don't mess up my money." Keep that vision in your head. Me personally, because I'm a man of God, and of course, I have to stay professional. So I may not be able to talk about my religion at work, but because of my personal faith, that's how I stay grounded. That's how I keep integrity, and that's how I make sure my communication is correct. And of course, also being a father of three girls, I would say they played a huge part in teaching me proper communication because boys is different. Well, girls, you can't communicate poorly and think you're going to get away with it. They're going to hold you accountable and they're going to let you know, I don't like the way you talked to me the other day. Or you can get your point across without yelling. So, as a father, that really helped me to have a lot of patience and understand the proper way to communicate. It starts with respect. Look somebody in the eye. I'm never going to talk to a cook, dishwasher, or server. I'm never going to look down at them. I'm never going to belittle them as though my job is more important. It's not because I
Mhm.
can't do the job by myself. If I'm talking to other peers, I need them to work just as hard as I am. So I'm gonna have respect for them. And the best way to do that sometimes is if you know that you have to communicate something that's not going to go over well, make sure that you always do it in a comfortable setting. You know how like they say, hey, if you want to break up with somebody, do it in public. You can kind of play that technique. If you got to share some bad news, but you want the entire team to hear it, do it in a meeting. Don't just one on one somebody. Do it in a meeting and talk general. If the manager Bobby had a bad shift and he had a bad shift because he forgot to check labor and call people in, then instead of calling Bobby out, because I also don't want to beat Bobby up, communicate it with the entire team, but do it in a positive coaching way. Hey guys, excellent week on sales. I'm so proud of you all. I appreciate all the hard work. Remember, if you want to avoid a rush shift, make sure you validate labor, 3 days before that shift. And then that same day, always check labor, see what's going on. We may have events that get added onto the books. I don't want you guys to be short staffed. So make sure we're always checking that. Now, this way, the entire team knows the message. Now, behind the scenes, they may know he talking about Bobby, girl. He ain't talking about me. But guess what? That's irrelevant because during my communication, I'm staying professional. Now, you guys want to kiki and laugh about it later? That's fine. Just don't do it in Bobby's face and don't create a hostile work environment because I care about Bobby's experience too. And I don't have a staff member named Bobby. Just I don't know why Bobby is always the default name I use for examples.
Hey, that's good that you don't have a staff member named Bobby, so you don't accidentally call out one of your real staff members. But you shared a lot there. And I think you having that emotional intelligence enough to know how to address these tough situations and tough conversations, and even reading body language, like that chef that was going off. no clue that what he was saying was not landing in the right way. But you
Hmm.
can tell because you're kind of tuned in with, reading people's body language and being able to understand their emotions. And you can tailor what you're saying. I know that, well, from watching television, I've never actually been in a professional kitchen, but things can get heated. So
Yeah,
able to kind of check your emotions and keep a level head and look at people as your team and your peers is extremely important. And I'm sure every person in the restaurant industry wishes that they had you as a manager or leader to take that approach.
appreciate that.
Alrighty, so we like to wrap up with something a little
Hmm.
fun.
Okay.
So I'm just going to ask you to share with us something on your bucket list.
Ooh, that's a good one. Uh, something that's on my bucket list would definitely be to see Wu Tang or Nas perform before it's too late. As you can see, my
Mm.
cup. Um,
I couldn't tell what it was. It says
yeah,
Wu-Tang.
yes, I'm a
Awesome.
huge Wu Tang fan. I know that they have a residency right now in Las Vegas. So I would say I'm trying to accomplish that before it's too late. There, it's definitely on my bucket list to see them perform in person.
All
I
right.
missed out on the golden years, so for me, yeah, that's something I'm actually trying to knock out this year.
Make it happen. Hopefully
Yes,
they'll be there long enough. Make it happen. Awesome.
yes.
Well, that concludes our episode of our Connect to Engage video chat, where we're talking to professionals from the restaurant industry. We hope you enjoyed this immersive exploration of the role of communication in the restaurant industry, but our journey through communication skills does not end here. So each of you who are listening or watching today are an integral part of this series. So we appreciate your feedback and questions and suggestions for any future episodes. Please be sure to reach out to us through our social media channels, or you can visit connecttoengage.com. We'd love to hear from you. And I want to thank you one more time, Darren, so much for spending time with me today and taking time out of your busy schedule to share your communication experiences with us. So be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on those notifications so you never miss an episode. Until then, bye for now.
All right.
So it was awesome to talk to Darren about the restaurant industry from the perspective of a chef and manager. And Jen, you had spoken with Todd about the perspective of an owner. So
Yeah.
I'd love for us to just kind of talk about what we thought. What are your reflections and your takeaways?
Well, what I got from both of those video chats was that they both strongly believe that communication is everything. I believe Darren even said that. He said
Yeah.
communication is everything.
Mhm.
And what I found most interesting about both of them was that they both seem to have this inherent um, level of emotional intelligence to know
Right.
and recognize. And Adrienne, I think you even brought it up, and Jen, you did as well, to know and recognize that they have different individuals from different cultures, different generations and ages, different communication styles and preferences, different needs, communication needs to manage, their role within the organization. So it's not just, uh, the operations of each restaurant or food establishment, but really, you know, their role, their experience, and both of them cared about those individuals' experiences, right? So whether or not they were making the most of themselves in their career paths for individuals, I think Todd talked about when he spoke with an individual saying, "You're, my worst employee, but I know that's not you. What's going on?" And he shared his own
Right.
experience too.
Right.
So really having that emotional intelligence, really caring about the experience that all of their employees and colleagues were having and how that translates into better customer experience for the organization, which means better overall business for the restaurant and the organization. So I think, that emotional intelligence and knowing that communication is vital and knowing that we need different modes of communication is really what I got from both of them, which in different, slightly different ways, but that was the common tie.
It makes total sense that you have to communicate just with so many different channels in the restaurant industry. And Adrienne, you had pointed that out too, like front of house has to know what's going on with back of house, and don't forget about the customer. And the red onion story, I feel like just wrapped it all up. He was so engaged in that story and just brought it to life that I love how you're like, well, do the customers know there's no red onions? I mean, it was such a good story that but he's right. The top person knew that there wasn't going to be any red onions on the chicken sandwich, but then didn't let anybody else know. And so how do you communicate something like that everyone in the restaurant needs to know about? And he said, some people don't speak English, don't read English. So yeah, you can post it, which I think is a good idea. But then you also, what did he say? He talked about this red book, didn't know about the red book, had no idea what the red book was, which now I'm like, oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. There needs to be this book where different shifts talk to each other. The other term, and I took some notes, so I'm looking, the other term that he used that I really loved was the pre-shift meeting, where he talked about everyone in the AM or the PM shift gets together, has a little conversation before the shift starts so that everyone's on the same page. So he had a ton of information. Both Darren and Todd had a ton of information about communicating with their entire staff and customers.
Right. And I see the challenges they have too. And I know Todd mentioned how it's kind of a revolving door. Not everyone's the same time or they're the same day. So how do you meet every single employee when or however they need to receive the information? And just being, so you mentioned that emotional intelligence, being in tune and understanding that you can't communicate with everyone the same way. And I have this image of a chef in my mind just from watching television who barks out orders. And I'm like, all chefs are yelling all the time. But these two men who we had, definitely dispelled that myth. So there are some people who are really in tune with their employees and what their needs are, realizing that if you take care of your employees, that's going to give the guests a great experience. And obviously that's what every business wants, so they can have their guests keep coming back.
Yeah. Communicating with respect is something that Darren said that I think every single industry needs to take to heart. I think that as communication professionals, we know that communicating with anger and communicating with disrespect is going to get you nowhere. It's going to shut off your listener and they're not going to hear the message that you want them to hear. So I really love the way that Darren said that piece. One thing I want to point out that we keep referring back to Todd is Todd is going to be on episode 8 on our YouTube channel. So this is episode 9. Due to the holiday season, we had to separate these two episodes. So go back and watch Todd's episode, which is episode 8. And he's a great communicator, very funny, different style than Darren, but definitely I think both effective.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I was just going to say about the different communication modes, this is something that keeps coming up every single time. It doesn't matter what industry it is. It's like, oh, you have to understand verbal communication is important, but also written communication and those nonverbal cues that you have to read to understand what, maybe people do understand or don't understand. And all of these trends we're noticing, it's almost like we gave them a script, but we didn't. This is just the experience that naturally occurs in our professional and personal lives. There's so much communication is very dynamic. So it's something we can learn to, though, right? The more you practice, you get better at it. So that's their
Absolutely.
experience definitely showed, because I know day one, they weren't there, but after these years of experience and working with a lot of different people over time, it's definitely helped.
And I think what was interesting about both of these gentlemen is that a lot of the conversations that you ladies had was related to their communication on the back end of things. So their organization within their employees, because they know that if they have more effective communication, operations are better, and people's experiences as employees or colleagues is better, which then translates, just like we said, to a better customer experience, which means a better business overall. But it just shows that how critical it is for an organization to really take stock into their internal communication practices and really investing in improving those if you want your overall business to be better.
One of my favorite moments was when Darren corrected himself and he switched his term to team. He said, no, they're not my subordinates. They're not under me. They're part of my team. And the words we use are so important. And he, realized that and acknowledged that. And it's, that connection that you have with the people around you, and how do they feel based on how you're communicating with them, or the terms that you use to make them feel included.
Absolutely.
All right.
These are both great discussions, great conversations.
Yes, I cannot wait to see what the next one holds. So with that, we will thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Connect to Engage video chats. And please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss a future episode. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.